Satanism and Communism by Richard Wurmbrand. Chapter 7, Marx, Darwin, and Revolution. Marx and Darwin. What was the specific contribution of Marx to Satan's plan for mankind? The Bible teaches that God created man in his own image. Genesis 1:26. Up to the time of Marx, man continued to be considered as the crown of creation. Marx was Satan's chosen tool to make man lose his self-esteem, his conviction that he comes from high places and is meant to return to them. Marxism is the first systematic and detailed philosophy which drastically reduces the notion of man. According to Marx, man is primarily a belly which has to be filled and refilled constantly. The prevailing interests of man are economic in nature. He produces in order to satisfy his needs. For this purpose, he enters into social relationships with others. This is the basis of society, what Marx calls the infrastructure: marriage, love, art, science, religion, philosophy. Everything other than the needs of the belly are all superstructure, determined in the last analysis by the state of the belly. No wonder Marx praised Darwin's book, The Descent of Man, another masterstroke which makes men forget their divine origin and divine purpose. Darwin said that man springs from the animal world. Man was dethroned by these two. Satan could not dethrone God, so he devalued man. Man was shown to be the progeny of animals and a mere servant to his intestines. It is a strange coincidence that the 19th century gave the world three leading personalities opposed to Christianity, all bearing the name of Charles. Karl, German for Charles; Marx, Charles Darwin; and the French poet Charles Baudelaire. The later wrote in Abel and Cain. Race of Cain ascended to heaven and through God to the earth. Marx wrote to Ferdinand Lassalle on January 16, 1861, Darwin's book is very important and serves me as a basis in the natural sciences for the historical class struggle. Marx's son-in-law, Paul Lafargue, in Socialism and the Intellectual, says, when Darwin published his Origin of Species, he took away from God his role as creator in the organic world, as Franklin has despoiled him of his thunderbolt. It was not Darwin's original intent to harm religion. He had written, there is no grandeur in view of this life with its several powers, having been originally breathed into a few forms or into one. In order to make his position more emphatic, Darwin inserted the phrase, by the Creator, after breathed in the second edition. It remained there in all the succeeding editions he published. Later, Freud would complete the work of these two giants, reducing man basically to a sex urge, sometimes sublimated in politics, arts, or religion. It was the Swiss psychologist Carl Gustav Jung who returned to the biblical doctrine that the religious impulse is man's basic urge. The age of Marx was a time of Satanist ferment in many spheres of life. The Russian poet Sologub wrote, my father is the devil. Another Russian poet, Bryansov, said, I glorify equally the Lord and the devil. Marx was a child of the time that gave us Nietzsche, Hitler and Mussolini's favorite philosopher. Max Stirner, an extreme anarchist, and Oscar Wilde, the first theoretician of freedom for homosexuality, a vice which today has met with acceptance even among the clergy. Satanic forces prepared Russia for the victory of Marxism. The time of the revolution was a period when love, goodwill, and healthy feeling were considered mean and retrograde. Girls hid their innocence and husbands their faithfulness. Destruction was praised as good taste, neurasthenia as the sign of a fine mind. This was the theme of new writers who burst out on the scene of obscurity. Men invented vices and perversions and were fastidious in their avoidance of being thought moral. How was it that Stalin became a revolutionist after reading Darwin? As a student in an Orthodox seminary, he obtained from Darwin the concept that we are not creatures of God, but the result of an evolution in which ruthless competition reigns. It is only the strongest and most cruel who survive. He learned that moral and religious criteria play no role in nature, and that man is as much a part of nature as a fish or an ape. Long live ruthlessness and cruelty. Darwin had written a scientific book setting forth his theory of origins. It had no economic or political implications. But though many might go so far as to concede that God created the world through a long process of evolution, the end result of Darwin's theory has been the killing of tens of millions of innocents. He therefore became the spiritual father of the greatest mass murderer in history. Beyond the intellectual turmoil of the 19th century can be traced the influence of the French Revolution, which was very spiritually much akin to the Russian cataclysm of the 20th century. During the upheaval in France, Anarchis Cloutier, a leading French revolutionary and Illuminatus, declared himself to be the personal enemy of Jesus Christ. He proclaimed before the Convention of November 17, 1792, "The people is the sovereign and the God of the world. Only fools believe in any other God and a supreme being." The convention then issued a decree proclaiming the nullification of all religions. For those of us who take seriously the words of the Lord's Prayer, "Deliver us from evil," the meaning is clear. We implore a loving God to protect us and society around us from false doctrine, from pernicious art that accustoms us to evil under the guise of beauty, and from immorality in life. Then we need have no fear of the devil's snares. You have a choice. Do you want to become like the devil, cruel and vicious, or like Jesus the God, man of holy love and peace? Moses Hess' false Zionism. To complete the picture, we will consider Moses Hess, the man who converted Marx and Engels to the socialist ideal. There is a tombstone in Israel inscribed with the words, "Moses Hess, founder of the German Social Democratic Party." Hess expounds his beliefs in the Red Catechism for the German people. What is black? Black is the clergy. These theologians are the worst aristocrats. The clergyman teaches the princes to oppress the people in the name of God. Secondly, he teaches the people to allow themselves to be oppressed and exploited in God's name. Thirdly, and principally, he provides for himself with God's help a splendid life on earth, while the people are advised to wait in heaven. The red flag symbolizes the permanent revolution until the completed victory of the working classes in all civilized countries. The Red Republic. The socialist revolution is my religion. The workers, when they have conquered one country, must help their brethren in the rest of the world. This was Hess's religion when he first issued the Catechism. In the second edition, he added a few chapters. This time, the same religion, i.e. the socialist revolution, uses Christian language in order to credit itself with believers. Together with the propaganda of revolution, there are indeed a few nice words about Christianity as a religion of love and humanity. But its message must be made clear. Its hell must not be on earth and its heaven beyond. The socialist society will be the true fulfillment of Christianity. Thus, Satan disguises himself as an angel of light. After Hess convinced Marx and Engels of the socialist idea, claiming from the very beginning that its purpose would be to give the last kick to medieval religion, his friend George Jung said it even more clearly. Marx will surely chase God from his heaven. An interesting development took place in Hess's life. He who had founded modern socialism also founded an entirely different movement, a specific brand of Zionism. Thus Hess, founder of socialism, whose aim was to chase God from heaven, was also founder of a diabolical type of Zionism that was to destroy godly Zionism, the Zionism of love, understanding, and concord with surrounding nations. He who taught Marx the importance of class struggle wrote in 1862 these surprising words, "Race struggle is primary, class struggle is secondary." He had lighted the fires of a class war, a fire never extinguished, instead of teaching people to cooperate for the common good. The same Hess then breeds a distorted Zionism, a Zionism of race struggle. As we reject satanic Marxism, so also must every responsible Jew or Christian reject this diabolical perversion of Zionism. Hess claims Jerusalem for the Jews, but without Jesus, the King of the Jews. What need has Hess of Jesus? He writes, every Jew has the making of a Messiah in himself. Every Jewess that of a Mater Dolorosa in herself. Then why in the world did he not make of the Jew Marx a Messiah, a God-anointed man, instead of a hater bent on chasing God from heaven? For Hess, Jesus is a Jew whom the heathen deified as their Savior. Neither Hess nor the Jews seem to need him for themselves. Hess does not wish to be saved himself, and for an individual to seek personal sanctification is Indo-German, he says. The aim of the Jews, according to him, must be a messianic state, to prepare mankind for the revelation of the divine essence, which means, as he acknowledges in his Red Catechism, to wage the socialist revolution through racial and class struggle. Moses Hess, who allotted to his idol Marx the task of putting an end to medieval religion, replacing it with a religion of socialist revolution, writes these amazing words: I have always been edified by Hebrew prayers. What prayers do those who consider religion the opiate of the people say? We have seen already that the founder of scientific atheism prayed while wearing phylacteries before burning candles. Jewish prayers can be misused in a blasphemous sense, just as Christian prayers are perverted in Satanist rituals. Hess had taught Marx that socialism was inseparable from internationalism. Marx writes in his Communist Manifesto that the proletariat has no fatherland. In his Red Catechism, Hess mocks the fatherland notion of the Germans, and he would have done the same with the fatherland notion of any other European nation. Hess criticized the Erfurt program of the German Social Democratic Party for its unconditional recognition of the national principle. But Hess is an internationalist with a difference. Jewish patriotism must remain. He writes, whoever denies Jewish nationalism is not only an apostate, a renegade in the religious sense, but a traitor to his people and to his family. Should it prove true that the emancipation of the Jews is incompatible with Jewish nationalism, then the Jew must sacrifice emancipation. The Jew must, above all, be a Jewish patriot. I agree with Hess's patriotic ideas to the extent that what is sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander. I am for every kind of patriotism, that of the Jews, the Arabs, the Germans, the Russians, the Americans. Patriotism is a virtue if it means the endeavor to promote economically, politically, spiritually, and religiously the welfare of one's own nation, provided that it is done in friendship and cooperation with other nations. But the Jewish patriotism of a revolutionary socialist who denies the patriotism of all other nations is highly suspect. It seems to be a diabolical plan to make all peoples hate the Jews. If I were a non-Jew who saw the Jews accept Hess's plans of unilateral patriotism, I would oppose it. Fortunately, no Jews have accepted the satanic plan. In fact, it was Herzl who gave a sane turn to Zionism. In its modern form, no trace of Satanism has remained. The race struggle proposed by Hess is false as the class struggle he enjoined. Hess did not abandon socialism for this specific kind of Zionism. After writing Rome and Jerusalem, he continued to be active in the world socialist movement. Hess does not state his thoughts clearly, therefore it is difficult to evaluate them. It is enough to know that according to him, quote, the Christian world views Jesus as a Jewish saint who became a pagan man, end quote. It is enough for us to read in his book, we today long for a far more comprehensive salvation than that which Christianity was ever able to offer. From the Red Catechism, it follows that this more comprehensive salvation is the socialist revolution. It could be added that Hess was not only the original source of Marxism and the man who attempted to create an anti-God Zionism, but also the predecessor of the liberation theology currently endorsed in the World Council of Churches and Catholicism. One and the same man who's almost unknown has been the mouthpiece of three satanic movements: communism, a racist, hateful brand of Zionism, and a theology of revolution. No one can be a Christian without loving the Jews. Jesus was Jewish, as were the Virgin Mary and all the apostles. The Bible is Jewish. The Lord has said salvation is of the Jews, John 4:22. Hess, on the other hand, exalted the Jews as though he consciously wanted to create a violent anti-Jewish reaction. He said that his religion was that of socialist revolution. The clergy of all other religions were crooks. Revolution was the only religion for which has had a high regard. He writes, "Our religion, the Jewish, has as its points of departure the enthusiasm of a race which from its appearance on the stage of history has foreseen the final purposes of mankind, and which had a foreboding of the messianic time in which the spirit of humanity will be fulfilled, not only in this or that individual or only partiality, but in the social institutes of all mankind. This time, which Hess calls messianic, is the time of the victory of the socialist world revolution." The idea that the Jewish religion had as its points of departure the concept of a godless socialist revolution is an ugly joke and an insult to the Jewish people. Hess speaks persistently in religious terms, but he does not believe in God. He writes that our God is nothing more than the human race united in love. The way to arrive at such union is a socialist revolution, in which tens of millions of specimens of his beloved mankind will be tortured and killed. He makes no secret of the fact that he wishes neither the domination of heaven nor that of earthly powers, which are both oppressive. There is no good in any religion except that of social revolution. It is useless and inefficient to elevate the people to real freedom and to make them participate in the goods of existence without freeing them from spiritual slavery, i.e., from religion. He speaks in one breath about the absolutism of celestial and earthly tyrants over slaves. The satanic depths of communism can be understood only by knowing that kind of man Moses Hess was, for he influenced Marx and Engels, with whom he founded the First International as well as Bakunin. Without a knowledge of Hess, Marx is unintelligible, because it is he who brought Marx to socialism. Consider Marx's words already quoted. "Words I teach all mixed up into devilish muddle. Thus anyone may think just what he chooses to think." Marx wrote in such a manner. Hess's writings are even more devilish muddle, which are difficult to untangle but which must be analyzed for possible connections between Marxism and Satanism. Hess's first book was called The Holy History of Mankind. He proclaimed it to be a work of the Holy Spirit of truth, saying further that, as Son of God freed men from their own slavery, Hess would free them from political bondage. "I am called to witness for the light, as John has been." At that time, Marx, who was still opposed to socialism and had not known Hess personally, started to write a book against him. For unknown reasons, this book was never completed. He later became Hess's disciple. As previously indicated, Hess's avowed aims were to give a last kick to medieval religion and to produce ravages. In the introduction to his book, Last Judgment, he declares his satisfaction that the German philosopher Kant had allegedly decapitated the old Father Jehovah together with his whole Holy Family. Hess covers his own ideas with the name of the great philosopher. Kant had had no such intentions. He had written to the contrary, "I had to limit knowledge to make place for faith." Hess declares the Jewish as well as the Christian religion to be dead, which does not prevent him from writing in Rome and Jerusalem about our holy writings, the holy language of our fathers, our cult, the divine laws, the ways of providence, and godly life. It is not that at different stages in life he held different opinions. In his pseudo-Zionist book, he declares that he does not disown his former godless endeavors. No, this is an intentional devilish muddle. Hess was a Jewish and a forerunner of Zionism. Because Hess, Marx, and other people like them were Jewish, some people consider communism a Jewish plot. Yet Marx also wrote anti-Jewish books. In this respect, too, he has simply followed Hess. This Zionism, Hess, who elevates Jewry to heaven, wrote in his book about the monetary system. The Jews, who had the role in the natural history of the social animal world to develop mankind into a savage animal, have fulfilled this, their professional job. The mystery of Judaism and Christianity has been revealed in the modern Judeo-Christian. The mystery of the blood of Christ, like the mystery of the old Jewish worship of the blood, appears here unveiled as being the mystery of the predatory animal. Don't worry if you fail to understand these words. They were written mixed up into devilish muddle. but the hatred for the Jewishness contained in them is clear. Hess is a racist, Jewish as well as anti-Jewish, according to the needs of the spirit which inspired his works and which he calls holy. Hitler could have learned his racism from Hess. He who had taught Marx that social class is a decisive factor also wrote the contrary. Life is an immediate product of race. Social institutions and conceptions as well as religions are typical and original creations of the race. The problem of race lies hidden behind all the problems of nationalities and freedom. All past history was concerned with the struggle of races and classes. Race struggle is primary, class struggle is secondary. How will Hess manage to have so many contradictory ideas triumph? I will use the sword against all citizens who resist the endeavors of the proletariat. We will hear the same from Marx. Violence is the midwife which takes the new society out of the womb of the old one. Marx's first teacher was the philosopher Hegel, who merely paved the way for Hess. Marx, too, had sucked poison from Hegel, for whom Christianity was wretched in comparison to the glorious past of the Greek culture. Hegel wrote, Christians have piled up such a heap of reasons for comfort in misfortune that we ought to be sorry in the end that we cannot lose a father or a mother once a week. While for the Greek, misfortune was misfortune, pain was pain. Christianity had been satirized in Germany before Hegel, but he was first to satirize Jesus himself. He also wrote nice things about Christianity, the same devilish muddle. We are what we feed upon. Marx fed upon the satanic ideas, therefore he set forth Satanist doctrine. The organization hell. Communists have a habit of creating frontline organizations. All of the above suggests the probability that communist movements are themselves front organizations for occult Satanism. The means to fight Satanism are spiritual, not carnal. Otherwise, while one Satanist front organization, such as Nazism, is defeated, another will rise to greater victory. Himmler, the Minister of the Interior Affairs of Nazi Germany, thought himself to be King Henry the Fowler's reincarnation. He believed that it was possible to harness occult powers to serve the Nazi army. Several Nazi leaders were involved in black magic. What was mere supposition when I published the first edition of the present book is now a proven fact. The proof has been given by the communists themselves. The story begins with the Nechayev case, which prompted Dostoevsky to write his renowned novel, The Demons. Nechayev, called a splendid young fanatic by Bakunin, Marx collaborating in founding the First International, wrote the Catechism of the Revolutionists as the guide for the Russian organization Popular Revenge. It appeared around 1870. The purpose of this organization was formulated as follows. Our cause is terrible, complete, universal, and pitiless destruction. Let us unite with the savage criminal world, these true and only revolutions of Russia. The first man the Nechayev group killed was one of their founding comrades, Ivanov, who dared to criticize his leadership. No criticism was permitted. Nechayev's plan was to divide mankind into two unequal parts. 1/10 gets personal liberty and unlimited rights over the other 9/10. These must lose their personality and turn into a kind of herd. They will engage in spy work. Each member of society will spy on the other and will be obliged to denounce. All are slaves and are equal in slavery. Nechayev wrote in his catechism, a revolutionist must infiltrate everywhere, in the upper and lower classes, in churches and literature. His disciple Peter Verovensky commented, we are already terribly powerful. Jurors who acquit criminals are completely ours. The district attorney who trembles in courts not to be considered liberal enough is ours. Administrators, men of letters, we are many, very many, and they don't know they belong to us. On the basis of such a program, an organization with an impressive name was formed, the World Revolutionist League. Its constitution was signed by Nechayev and Bakunin, Marx's intimate collaborator. In the beginning, the League consisted only of a handful of men. The revolutionist Duke Peter Dolgorukov wrote on October 31st, 1862. In London, I met Kelsiev, who belonged to the above organization, a narrow-minded but good man, terribly fanatical, with the face of a soft man. Kelsiev told me softly, with a benevolent look, if we have to slaughter, why not slaughter, provided this is useful. All these London men speak continually about burning down, slaughtering, cutting in pieces. These words have never left their tongues since Bakunin came to England. In 1869 in Geneva, Nechayev wrote a proclamation in which, referring to the man who shot Emperor Alexander II, he advises, we must consider what Karakazov did as a prologue. Yes, this was a prologue. Let us see to it that the drama itself begins soon. Another proclamation says, soon, soon the day will come when we will unfurl the great flag of the future, the red flag, and we will attack with great noise the imperial palace. We will have one shout, to the axes! And then we will kill the party of the emperor. Do not pity. Kill in places if these base rascals dare to enter them. Kill in houses, kill in villages. Remember, those who will not side with us will be against us. Whoever is against us is our enemy, and we must destroy enemies by all means. In 1872, a revolutionary society was formed under the simple name, the Organization, which had a super-secret circle chillingly called Hell. Though its goals have continued to be pursued for well over a century by groups which continually change their names, its existence has been unknown to the outside world. Soviet historians have dared to write about the activities of Hell, a forerunner of the Russian Communist Party, only as recently as 1965, 93 years after its formation. In Revolutionist Underground in Russia, E.S. Vilenskaya wrote, Hell was the name of the center above the secret organization, which not only used terror against the monarchy, but also had punitive functions toward the members of the secret organization. In Chernysevsky or Nechayev, we read that one of the members, Fedosiev of Hell, took it upon himself to poison his own father in order to give the organization his inheritance. Chernyshevsky, who belonged to this movement, wrote, I'll participate in revolution. I'm not frightened by dirt, by drunkards with sticks, by slaughter. We don't care if we have to shed thrice as much food as the rebels in the French Revolution. So what if we had to kill 100,000 farmers? Here are some of the express aims of the satanic organization. Mystification is the best, almost the only means to impel men to make a revolution. It is enough to kill a few million people and the wheels of revolution will be oiled. Our ideal is awful, complete, universal, and pitiless destruction. And again, mankind must be divided into two unequal parts. 1/10 receives personal liberty and unlimited rights over the other 9/10. The latter must lose their personality and become a kind of herd. In their writings, we constantly find the words, we are not afraid. A typical example is the following proclamation. We are not afraid that we might find out 3 times more blood will have to be shed for the overthrowing of the existing, other than the Jacobins, the French revolutions, who had to shed in their revolution in 1790. If for the fulfillment of our objectives we had to slaughter 100,000 landlords, we would not be afraid of this either. In reality, the number of victims was much greater. Churchill says in his memoirs of World War II that Stalin confessed that 10 million people died as a result of the collectivization of agriculture in the Soviet Union. The important fact to remember is that the communists have now confessed, after a delay of almost 100 years, that at the inception of their movement it was a circle called Hell. Why Hell? Why not the Society for the Betterment of the Poor, or of mankind? Why the stark emphasis on Hell? Today the communists are more cautious, but in the beginning their very name revealed that their avowed aim was to recruit men for eternal damnation.